Alrighty, here we go with business ethics and social responsibility. Now, your book begins by talking about what is ethical, what is ethics, where do we get ethics from? A lot of this is learned, um, and the reason I say it's learned is because of your family environment or lack thereof, um, the exposure that you've had to either a religious environment or the lack thereof, um, the observance of your family members when you were growing up. Then after that, it extended to your peers in elementary, junior high, high school, as far as your ethics being either challenged and or influenced by others. And then once you get to the point of knowing right from wrong, only because you're taught. And the reason I say you're taught or you're not taught um, is based on being able to understand that now. Typically, for a person, they say that between the ages of 7 and 8 is when you become conscious of right and wrong and understanding right and wrong. Like if I go over there to that flame, put my hand on it, yeah, it's the wrong thing to do because I'm going to get burnt. Those type of things. They're not, and sometimes for some, it's not as black and white as we would think. For others, it's not. Why? I don't know. So we're going to be looking at this and we're going to be looking at the ethics and we're going to look at what they are. So they talk about the underflated football issue in the NFL some time ago. You know, the ethics about it, um, the drug prices that they're actually more expensive, why they're more expensive, why it only costs $1 to go ahead and buy additional French fries, but yet trying to buy a fruit cup is going to cost you more money. Where's the one equity and the ethics in that? So we're looking at normative standards or generally accepted rules of conduct that govern society, okay? And that's where we get that from philosophy as well, where we've developed them over some time and we know what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. Um, Again, our upbringing. So we look at also what's fair, why it's not fair, um, and that's just not fair. For example, you just got out of seeing one movie, and because it's an open area now, who's to know if you go to see another movie? You know, if you've just gotten out of one and go into another one. Uh, Now, if it were me, I'd get caught. If I even think of it, I would get caught. But really, do they really check for those tickets once they're there? The rule of thumb is that they don't. So again, um, sometimes telling the clerk that you've received way too much change instead of the fact that you didn't get enough change, but just letting them know, hey, you gave me way too much money. That type of ethics. If you've ever had to count money out or have had to um, balance a cashier box um, and go through that hell, you would return the money back. Believe me. So that's what we're talking about here. The normative standards of how we behave on average, how we treat each other, the issues that we're having now with road rage, things like that, which we shouldn't. Um, the unwritten roles and the unwritten laws that we have that we expect, and how we treat each other when you're waiting in line and somebody decides to cut, you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? Some people don't mind, some other people will, especially during Christmas. Everybody's trying to get in and get the deals. Oh, and gee, oh my goodness, all these people that are, cutting a line or getting in, and people all of a sudden their behaviors just go, um, and their ethical behavior goes out the door. Don't ask me why, but it does. So when we're looking at this, we're now looking at business ethics. Um, Again, conflicts for applying standards of reason to business dilemmas, and it's kind of hard because individual ethics um, differ from those for a corporation or business. Again, there's no statute on like I was talking about cutting a line. We refer to adultery as cheating. Um, I remember when cheating on exams is the same thing, that we shouldn't be doing it. I also remember where we always, well, I grew up with, once you get married, you get married. That's it. And now if it doesn't work out, then you get a divorce. But I never went into it saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and get married. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, I'll just divorce. Never went in that with that kind of blase type of attitude. Um, but again, society changes, their culture changes, um, their thoughts and views on things change based on what they've been exposed to and what they have not been exposed to. So there's three layers of business ethics where we have then the values of which is honesty, fairness, how we treat each other, and then the issues related to the community and the environment. Again, making sure that we're not doing anything that's going to threaten the environment. We're not polluting the wetlands. We're not trying to um, pollute the oceans or rivers. Um, we're trying to be as honest and as um, without changing the word, as ethical or moral as we can toward where our business is. We have the positive law, and that's found on page 29 of your book. That law is followed. Uh, we still have issues with fairness and disclosure, and some of the um, issues that we have been seen in the financial markets cases of 2008, where we have things such as um, the financial and existing regulations. For example, the not just the verdicts, but the issues that are still coming up. For example, how drugs cost so much because the drug companies, have to make their money as well. But how much of a return on investment do they need to make? 5,000% is a huge amount. I know that we're researching and it costs money, but really, if we look at the ROI, meaning how much your expenses are based on the profit, how much you're actually making based off of how much you're actually selling this for, and realizing that if it doesn't take that much to make, why are you then creating such a high cost of a prescription drug that people need? Um, that's why we have now the regular drug and the generic drugs, because the generic drugs are a lot cheaper. I don't know the research on that offhand, whether or not they're better or they're worse. I just know that they're there. Um, so we have to look at some of those things that are there, where we're looking at whether or not, um, um, as far as it being positive, as being the type of the law is supposed to be positive, where it's supposed to be good, it's supposed to be fair, it's supposed to bring justice. But again, it's gotten so, how would I say, it's gotten so difficult now to see um, black and white without seeing the gray areas as well. Um, we're also looking at the natural law. Um, Positive law is not always standard because some principles are are not there. Um, for example, slavery was wrong even though law is allowed in the United States. We should have never had indentured servants. Um, it was wrong. Remember, it caused the Civil War. Even British law said no, we shouldn't have it. It was one thing to have servants, but they should be paid. They should be treated well. Um, they had this in Britain as well, but then we brought it over, and we actually decided to have a whole race of being indentured servants. So this is where we're looking at natural law and ethics, where we shouldn't have any slaves whatsoever. Now we're looking at moral and relativism, which is your standard based on the situation that you're dealing with. Depending on your pressures, you make a decision without regard to positive or normative law standards. That comes in where you're looking at things such as, they're called more situational ethics. Um, Bribery is illegal, right? Bribery is illegal, yet some people do it. And based on their pressures of why they're doing it, then bribery becomes their only solution, and they do it. They accept gifts, creating conflicts of business, of conflicts of interest. Companies still use the relative approach and argue that being competitive in international markets is different, um, where they actually do this type of um, business practices. Uh, but we have lobbyists as well, that try to make sure that the laws always go toward their clients and not necessarily what is good for the entire society. Then we also have the standards of religion and ethics. Oh my gosh, where faith, um, where you have your tenets of faith and the ethical standards. But again, here we have to consider what faith, based on where. Um, Back in the day, way back, yes, right after dinosaurs ruled the earth. Yes, right after that, I was born. So anyway, during that time where there was never a question as to whether Satanism was going to be allowed as a religion. It was just not thought of. And I'm talking about a whole culture back then. Wasn't even thought of, wasn't even um, discussed. And now, of course, it's allowed because it's been challenged in the courts. If that's what you believe in, that's how you believe. Even if the law allows you to disclaim liability for selling goods as is, the standards of religion may not require them to do more. Which means if you're selling a car as is, you know um, it's not working. You know it's not well, and you don't disclose that information to the person that's buying it. You know, where does religion, where does faith come in there? Where do your moral ethics stand there as far as trying to be just right for your fellow man? So again, those things come to play. And we have the ethical dilemmas. What should I do? What should I not do? What do I have a precedent? Um, Taking things that don't belong to you, which is stealing. Saying things that you know are not true, which is lying. Giving or allowing false impressions, again, lying. Buying influence or other engaging conflicts of interest, which is bribery. Um, Hiding or divulging information, again, an ethical issue. Um, and then taking an unfair advantage of somebody else. Those type of categories of dilemmas that we have. Um, Committing acts of personal decadence, perpetrating interpersonal abuse, permitting organizational abuse, violating the rules, conducting unethical actions, balancing then ethical dilemmas. I don't see how you can balance an ethical dilemma. Um, and then, of course, with all those categories, then how do we analyze them based on the situation? Again, relativism. Um, we have to have all the facts. That's why we have a jury of our peers. All of the facts, the information that we need to have available, but don't, um, that we would like to have, but we don't. What assumptions would you have to make in resolving the dilemma? Um, we have to look at each person involved. Again, in a jury, you take both sides, you listen to both sides, and you decide who's right, who's wrong. Um, then you look at the resolutions for the problem. Is there one solid resolution, or are there several that we can do? We look at the resolutions for the best one, for cost, legalities, and impact, if it's going to be good. And certain things may be good, but they not be the right thing to do. And we'll get into that. Making recommendations for the actions that should be taken. Um, Resolution of dilemmas, again, uh, is it the ones that are here are the cases that we're looking at are the resolution of dilemmas that are found in our book, Blanchard and Peel, for example. When we're looking at what Blanchard and Peel say, is it legal? Now, Peel says, if it's legal, is it balanced? Is it legal? And how does it make me feel? Um, is it legal? If it's no, for business ethic purposes, then your legal analysis is done. So this is just how to go ahead and resolve it. Is it legal? Yes or no? Okay, if it's not legal, then forget about how it's balanced, right? And how it makes me feel. Um, if it's unbalanced, who is the one being taken advantage of, or which party is being taken advantage of? And then how does that make you feel? Some people have no conscience. Some people develop a conscience later on, but it just depends, right? Um, and I'll bring in a little bit of religion here, just to go ahead and help us with an example. For example, when Moses was an Egyptian, he really didn't look at what the Hebrews were having to go through until he actually was there. Was it legal to have an indentured servant? Yes or no? Was it balanced? No, it wasn't balanced. There was a complete advantage over the Hebrew people based by the Egyptians. Then how did it make him feel? Well, until he confronted it, he didn't think anything of it. That's just the way life was. But once confronted, he was like, wait, whoa, wait a minute. Okay. Um, then now we have a resolution of dilemmas. His resolution wasn't very good. But anyway, that well, I'll leave it there. Um, the front page of the newspaper test. How would the story be reported? Giving both sides of the fact, or are we going to go through sensationalism? Use an objective and informed reporter's view, making sure that the reporter has all the rights. Now remember, when a reporter goes ahead and provides their information, they don't have to give their source. They can keep their source. Um, if it's anonymous, they can keep them just like that, anonymous. They have that right. But how is it going to be reviewed? How are we going to look at it? Um, Perspective. How would I review the problem if I sat on the other side of the fence? For example, abortion. I know it's a huge issue, but we're just going to talk about it as far as an example. Um, some people say no, you shouldn't um, abort. Period. All right. Well, it's not you. You don't have to go through that. What if the woman was raped? Should she go through that? Would it cause her another unnecessary um, problem and hardship? Yes or no? Um, can I discuss this with my family and friends who are close to me? Um, if it's an ethical dilemma, what am I trying to accomplish? What I'm trying to get? And then will I feel comfortable over the long term as I do today, based on the decision? Remember when I went back in chapter 1, I was talking to you about the jury panelists when I said I no, I can't do uh, the punishment phase. I cannot live with what's going to happen to this man if I make that decision or if I'm overruled. I just can't do that. How am I going to feel? Can't do that. Then the resolutions, the model for Wall Street Journal. Are you compliant? Are you violating any laws? And then, does this action contribute to my customers, shareholders, employees, community, and suppliers? Again, who's getting the advantage? Is it balanced? Is it not balanced? And then, what are the consequences? How will it affect me? How will it affect my company, employees, or stockholders? So again, what should I or what should I not do? And then, of course, you have Immanuel Kant's categorical uh, imperative and the golden rule. I love these two. Kant talks about his categorical imperative, meaning that if it's you want to be treated as anybody else, the golden rule, which is treat everybody as you would want to be treated on your own, right? Which goes back to the Bible. But then the other one is that is not mentioned here is utilitarianism, which is if it's good, then it's good, right? Doesn't matter if it's good for one person, it's good. Does it have a utility? Is it something that is useful? And this is the way sometimes we resolve the issues. But we fail to read these types of resolutions because we always talk about, well, everybody else does it, so why shouldn't I? That's not a true rationale for me. We if we don't do it, somebody else will. Well, no, that's the way it's always been done. How do you know? We'll wait until the lawyers tell us it's wrong. Really? By that time, you have so many fines, it's ridiculous. Again, does it really hurt anyone? Is the system unfair? I was just following orders. You think it's bad? You should have seen. It's a gray area. You can make anything a gray area. That doesn't mean that it is a gray area. I was just following orders. This one's hard because if it's a military issue, then yeah, you may have been following orders, and there's nothing that you could do. Um, Again, whom do the shareholders serve? Who do we serve? Is it self-interest? Should the corporation serve? And then, of course, do we have policies on that? Shareholders only, larger society, shareholders only, larger society. Who are we serving? What's our responsibility? And who's our responsibility to? Because overall, we're going to have to live with this. And later, and whether it's going to be now or later, it's going to impact us. All right, this is lecture summary one, part one. Get ready for lecture summary part two.